Welcome to Baseball Biz On Deck. This is Mark Carpenter, your host, and with me today, of course, is Mr. Matt Germain, that purveyor of all knowledge when it comes to the Tampa Bay Rays and that system and baseball and overall. But anyway, we're glad to have Matt here today, post-holiday season, and start talking about the hot stove. Hey, Matt, how you doing today, brother?
Happy New Year, Mark. Very happy to be here and happy to get talking about baseball as 2024 season looks very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think you could put that in neon lights and the top of the building and flash it because I can't even know where to start. I mean, if you look at baseball overall, I've been looking at Maury Brown on X, and he's putting all these different fictional images up of the Dodgers with Godzilla signing a contract, with Darth Vader signing a contract for the Dodgers. You know, that team, I'm thinking, well, it seems like I remember Mr. Cohen buying a team a couple of years ago for the Mets that didn't quite pan out. I'm really curious to see what happens with those boys and girls.
I think I don't want to predict things because we don't know how those guys are going to gel. And more than anything, we don't know how their health is going to be overall. What I see with the Dodgers is very dangerous, though. Like, I see a house of cards.
Yeah.
The likes of which we've never seen. I thought the Mets last year built a house of cards. I called that right away. Yeah. I said it's going to fall and it's going to be atrocious. Luckily for them, they flipped the switch, in season and got some prospects back for some of those ridiculous contracts. But the Dodgers are not going to get that same leeway because of the way they've structured the contracts. So you have a Shohei Ohtani who's had two Tommy Johns. Whatever you want to call the second one, I don't really care. He's going into his 30s as a two-way player, and we've never seen anybody do that, right? Yeah. So he's got two surgeries behind him. Now you're telling me that he's going to remain a top 10 hitter in MLB through his entire 30s while also trying to chip in on the pitching side of things. I see that as an invitation for a major injury. I don't know if it's a shoulder, an oblique. Regardless of what it is, I don't think Shohei Ohtani will hit to the level Aaron Judge will, as an example, right?
Yep.
Aaron Judge got $360 million. I think that was a solid, very reasonable contract for what he's going to produce in New York. To me, if you want to give Ohtani another 40 to 80 million above that, okay, maybe, because I don't see the pitching side working out through his entire 30s unless he goes to relief. And I don't think he'll be okay with that. From his personality, he wants to prove to the world that he can do everything, I think. So it's going to be interesting.
Your Ohtani, you have to have like an ultimate confidence. I mean, I think back to the time in golf with like Tiger Woods. He exuded confidence. He brought the game. He didn't have to talk about it. It was just there. And I think that's what people have seen with Ohtani. And I know people expect it, and Ohtani expects it more than anybody else. I don't know that they're going to get it. I mean, he's deferring parts of this $10 million contract so the Dodgers can even expand their spending for this year. So we'll see how that plays out. But I don't wish them ill. But some of these teams spend that much money, Matt. I'm kind of like, if you don't win, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, well, it just becomes, it becomes a lesson learned for other teams. I think a lot of teams looked at what the Padres and Mets did last year, for example, and they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't win the offseason. And so now you have Boris sitting on a bunch of clients that can't really get the most out of the teams because they all don't want to be that team again.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Oh, well, let's talk about the team that we love, at least today. And that's the Tampa Bay Rays, unless they change and become the St. Pete Rays. Did you see that?
Oh, I'm so happy they stepped that landmine, stepped aside from it, because I saw that as a slap in the face that didn't need to be handed out. I get the frustrations towards the Tampa side of thing, especially the counselors who aren't going to open up the vaults for any means of helping the Rays. So it didn't need to happen at all. Like it was a nice thought, one of those thoughts you have inside your head, but you don't actually speak publicly, right?
Yeah. Well, she did, and she sat down. It didn't happen though, so I'm glad she's happy and as a council person over in St. Pete. But sorry. Anyway, I don't want to belabor it, but man, when it came down that they were going to build the new Trop, for lack of a better phrase, at the moment, almost next door where it's at, and not bring it over to Tampa, I was completely disheartened. I was not surprised, but I was disheartened. I really hoped to see it somewhere like Ybor. I'd hope that baseball would enjoy the success that the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have enjoyed, just mere miles apart.
The way that I'm seeing it is like this. Okay. So before the mantra of the Rays potentially leaving started, the Rays were averaging a fair amount, right? Somewhere between 18.5 to 25,000 fans per year.
Yep.
Then the mantra from Stu Sternberg started because he had to build a momentum towards possibly going to Tampa. He tried to churn that up as much as possible over the years. It never worked out. But that turned off a lot of fans. And a lot of those fans stopped coming. I think those fans are going to return. And I think when the Rays get more aggressive marketing wise and seating wise, and there's not that whole tarped off area in the top of the stadium, and they build, from what I understand, there's going to be a significant population increase in St. Pete. How much does that add up to? So let's say 5,000 people increase. Well, how many of those are baseball fans? How many are going to go to games? You could argue all day long about what that means. But let's say you add on another, I don't know, be reasonable, like 2,000 fans per game on average for the season. Then you're talking about a 22,000 average, fan base, which is fine in MLB. They don't expect much more. You're already a top 10 to 12, TV market. So, and that has a chance to increase over time to the point where the Rays can fill it for the majority of the time, right? And I think they'll get there. I think with a new stadium, the way that they're building it, being able to use the restaurant areas year round and that kind of thing, I think that'll help bring the nightlife, which I think is the key for St. Pete, in my opinion. If you bring the nightlife to St. Pete and make it a young base, younger, it doesn't have to be young. It has to be like middle ground, right? And that's what the Padres have done, basically. So if they can do that, then I think they'll have a lot of success and the money will come. And I think both sides will benefit, St. Pete and the Rays, because to me, baseball is more of a beachy kind of sport anyway. It doesn't need to be downtown in a city. Yeah. If you have it near a beach, to me, that sells it right there. You spend the day at the beach, you go to the game after, then you go home. What's wrong with that? That's a good day.
I like it, brother.
I'd be skipping school if I was in high school. And I'd be at the beach and
don't let the youngsters hear that, man. No, I get it. Oh, well, I'm just glad, I guess, that something has been settled. I tell you, occasionally I work at a Tampa Baseball Museum, and I get pelted I've been getting pelted until recently with that question with, I'd say half the people come in. So what's going to happen with the Rays? So, where's your new stadium? I got to the point where I don't know, lady. I really don't. That's but now that it's done, we're, resolved to that. But being resolved to a new team for 2024, my friend. That is a place to look. Before we got started here, we talked a little bit about the hot stove. We talked about some Rays players, and man, oh man, we're seeing some changes earlier in the year than usual, right?
Right. No, I think it'll be a good thing. And the Rays I think they keep deepening their talent pool. And that's the thing. The versatility is always going to be a prime thing. And I think they have a lot of lessons learned under their belt, and they're trying to address all those issues that they've went through in the past and do it a little bit differently each time. So I like what they're putting together.
Yeah, I was really curious, though, because, I never know what's going to happen. I remember early on when I started becoming a Rays fan, and it was the year before Longoria was, traded. Mm-hmm. And people I knew said, I will never, ever go to another Rays game. I will never watch another Rays game. That's it. But for me, they let Evan go. Evan was the thumbprint of that team. He was, an icon of what that team meant. And since then, there's been several changes, and people have dealt with other icons leaving. One of them being Mr. Kiermaier himself, who's doing quite well up there in Toronto, and just, I think, re-signed another contract. So, Kiermaier is doing well, and the Rays are doing well. Neander's made some sometimes unpopular decisions, but overall, he's put a team out there on the field that can play.
Every major league team owner would love, I mean, love to have what the Rays have in terms of the front office and the scouting and the analytics. They would pay tens of millions for it. And I'm telling you right now, the Rays fans are spoiled rotten. I'm sorry, but you can whine and complain about KK, Longo, both of which spent a decade with the team, a decade of their prime years on top of it. And they've done nothing but go to the playoffs over the last 5 years. And all you hear about is, oh, but they were duds in the playoffs. They went to the World Series, game 6. They were a game and a half, not even away from winning the World Series. And that doesn't satisfy anybody. You know what? Like, it's just one of those things where it's extremely hard to maintain success in Major League Baseball. The Rays not only still have one of the top systems in MLB, but they're coming off a 99-win season with almost the exact same team, and fans still are not satisfied. So just trust the blueprint, trust the fact that they're looking to improve. They have ways to mitigate things, and they always have a plan. It's not always going to work out. There are maybe a handful of trades you can point out to that the Rays, I don't know what they're thinking. And you can say this, that, the other thing, but it doesn't matter. They were in a position to make that trade and to get that aggressive because of the success they had before that. So just be thankful that you don't have to be the cheering for a team that pops up every 10, 12, 15 years and says, hello, we're here, we still exist, and then goes away for another 10, 12 years, right? Like, that's not the way the Rays operate. And that's what I've always appreciated from it. I started covering the Rays way back when, and I still am flabbergasted that they refuse to tank. They have a tank in the stadium, but they refuse to tank. And to me, that is a pride and character thing that I love. They want to build a cohesive team all the way through the system. That is outstanding. They want high quality people in the organization. They don't want, wanderers out there. And when they do get them without knowing about it, they try to address it. They bench them, the best player on the team, talent wise. They still said, no, you won't play. You need to change, because that's the organization mantra. The Rays are a high quality, high character organization, top to bottom. Anybody that argues otherwise is a Yankee fan to me.
I love that, brother. Yeah, I get that 100%. And when you're talking about people who grouse about the Rays, it's like, I'm sorry, they didn't hit the century mark this year. What the heck, brother? I mean, they were so close. We had 13 wins in a row. Why couldn't you go more? I mean, you told me early on last year, come on, Mark, don't expect this to last. But, oh my gosh, what an exciting season. And they do play as a team. I was happy to see when they benched Franco, because he was making it unpleasant with other players, unbeknownst about all that other business going on. Just that, like, there must have been an attitude or some remarks. And guess what? I don't care how much we're paying you. Your butt's sitting down if you're hurting the team. Right. So I get that.
I think what some people might even overlook on that point is that it had to be translated, right? Whatever Franco was saying, probably wasn't saying it in English. And so some of those other players on the team had to probably translate it and say, what he's saying isn't good. Like, or I don't know, maybe there were incidents where it got a little rough, but I'd never heard anything about that. Yeah. So, it's one of those things too. When I look at the entire season, let's say we look at 2023, the Dodgers outspent the Rays by how many hundreds of millions, right? Hundreds, like over $200 million more.
Right.
And the Rays lost their top 3 pitchers. They lost Wander Franco, and they lost a bunch of relievers for the majority of the year. And they won one less game than the Dodgers. One. The Dodgers spent $200 million more, had the majority of their stars intact, and they couldn't, get any further than one game from the Rays.
Jeez.
I mean, think about that. To me, that blows my mind when I think about it that way.
I love it, brother. I mean, I absolutely do. I mean, one, because just it's not even economy of scale. It's just like good sense, finding great talent, either bringing it up through the farms or being real smart about being able to identify it. what was it with the car? Didn't we see? We made the one trade with Kittredge just recently with the Cardinals, but didn't we get Randy from the Cardinals?
Richie Palacios? Yeah. You know what? He replaces Luke Raley. So, you know, you have a left-handed bat in the outfield, excellent defense, can play all three outfield spots if needed. And to me, he has a higher ceiling than Luke Raley, who might have holes in his swing that other people figured out. So that is an example. But even before that, like when the off season started and Rule 5 draft was coming around, the Rays refused to lose assets for nothing. So they found a way to make 2 or 3 trades, including Vidal Brujan and Calvin Fauché, who went to Miami, and other ones, to rebuild that source of talent below them and make sure that their teams in the minor system are as high quality as possible. And that's what enables them to keep churning that through. There's other organizations like the Yankees, for example, that just lost, I don't know how much talent. They lost like 6 pitchers or 5 in the Rule 5 draft that are high quality. Matt Sauer belongs on their 40-man roster way more than some of the outfield crap that they have on there. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're not protecting Matt Sauer? And then you're going to say, well, we don't have enough pitching in the system. Well, why? Because you're not protecting the right guys. But they're spoiled in terms of being able to fix their errors in other ways. So I think that's what keeps the Rays going overall, that I don't think you'll ever be able to get through to a large market team. Except for Steve Cohen in the Mets. I think now that they've hired David Stearns, I see a change in their attitude and the way they operate that might go there. And they had that kind of success in Milwaukee. I think he's going to instill some of that. So it'll be interesting when you combine money with some smarts. And that's saying a lot for the Mets. He's going to have to make some changes. But I think they're going to head more towards the Rays way than the Yankees ever will.
Yeah, I said I've been curious when all the things that were going on with the Mets when Cohen came in, and I was thinking, my gosh, I've said before, well, look at him, he's going to buy himself a World Series. But the one thing I liked about Cohen, he came across as a fan. He came across as someone who loved the game and loved that team and wanted to see him succeed. They're not just an investment of some sort. They're not just a line item on the $1 billion plus, I'm sure, what he carries around in his pockets. But I'm excited to see that and kind of enthusiasm. And I think that not necessarily the enthusiasm, but the commitment to winning with the Rays is there. And Neander has led that for a long time. Like I said, people love him, people hate him. But if they hate him at the beginning of the season, they usually love him by the end of the season because he's been putting together some great teams.
I think it's hard for fans to get to it. I think once they win that one World Series, it'll solve a lot of those fan issues because that's all they look at. They just look at championship. And even then, if you talk to a Cubs fan this year, do they remember that World Series? No, they're ripping the franchise apart about Cody Bellinger and Marcus Stroman being gone and not having replacements. Fans are only going to be talk to a San Francisco Giants fan. They won 3 in 5 years, and they're still not content this year, and for good reason in some ways. But I think what's different with the Rays, and the reason I get frustrated, is because you can see how hard it is in the AL East of all places to contend. They've proven over and over and over and over and over again that they're committed to that year after year, that they find ways of doing it, whether it be shifts, whether it be openers, whether it be whatever. And now, despite all those things being addressed by MLB, they're still doing it. And fans still aren't satisfied for some reason. I shouldn't say all fans. I think some.
Enough of them that there's vocal. So I don't know if it was on a thread that something you started or not, but I saw somebody said, well, maybe you guys who haven't been around long enough don't remember the Devil Rays when they had a number of successive seasons that were beneath 90 wins a year, and said, hello, you need to treasure what you have right there. This is a good time, boys and girls. And I forget the specifics, but I read that and I thought, yeah.
It's true. Like I remember when I covered the Blue Jays, my big rant was always the Rays have had how many first overall picks, and the Blue Jays never had one. And so how is it that they can't compete? You know, like they should be way above and beyond everybody else. And at that point, they weren't. The Rays under Andrew Friedman even were a terrible drafting team. Terrible, like atrocious, I would say. One of the bottom 5. And people give him all the credit in the world. He deserves credit, but for different things than the draft. But so I remember the Devil Rays times as well as one of those things that it was more about the excitement of baseball in the area than it was about the performance of the team. And any little golden nugget that people could cling on to, whether it was Carl Crawford, Ben Zobrist, whatever, that's what they hung on to. And that's why they went to the games and enjoyed it, because they did have interesting players in there that were at the top of their game while they were with the Rays. I'm still sad that David Price had to leave. Like, I think of that group, the one that would have changed fortunes a lot would have been David Price. If they could have had the income at that point to make that work, there might have been a championship in there somewhere. But yeah, these are the things you look back on in a franchise and you say, well, what about this? What if that had happened? Like another example for the Rays is, what if they hadn't stepped away from the Charlie Morton option?
Yeah.
In my opinion, they win that series and that year. I think that was the game changer for them. It really sucked the wind out of their sails. And I'm hoping they learn from that, and that next time they kind of stick to it.
Yeah, Ground Chuck was amazing. And I cannot bring his name to the light for the moment. The catcher, Denard, little D. Those two guys, Darno and Morton, just were amazing to watch together and what they were able to achieve. And a lot of people, I think, shook their heads, or Rays fans, like, oh my gosh, this is a great talent. You're gonna let him go? He's a killer.
Yeah. He really wanted to be a Ray.
Yeah, it's sad. But I mean, all this changes going on right now with the hot stove, and the Rays have got a lot going on. We're losing Tyler Glass now, but I've kind of wondered what we've seen last year.
I don't see it as losing Tyler Glass. I want people to change that right now. You gained Ryan Pepio, who is going to be much more of a workhorse than Tyler Glasnow ever could be. Okay. And once the Rays analytics gets a hold of the stuff that Ryan Pepio had, they have an advantage. So one of the issues with Tyler Glasnow is that he has a hand condition that stops him from throwing a changeup. Okay. He just literally can't do it physically. So you know what's coming from Tyler Glasnow. What's one of the things that kept Justin Verlander and the rest of the old guys effective once their velocity dropped was being able to go to the off speed. If you can't do that, you're a dud. So to me, the Dodgers are in a dangerous position with Tyler Glasnow to the point where he's going to be very predictable. So he's going to have to be extremely high command when that velocity drops. I'm not sure with those tall, lanky legs and arms and everything flailing that he's going to get around to that. Maybe he does, but I see a drop off from Tyler. Maybe not this year, potentially 2 years, but like half of that deal to me might not work out. Essentially, is the way that I see it. But in Pepio, the Rays have a chance to actually build a full repertoire, sort of like what they did with Zach Littell, where they can actually look at a variety of options and really put those into work for Pepio. And I think if they build him up correctly, him and Baz, those two can become a really, really, really solid front line for the Rays for the long term. And eventually, that'll churn over once they start getting pricey. But by that point, maybe the new stadium will help the Rays keep them around for a little bit longer than usual. And Jeffrey Springs coming back to me is a big game changer. When he comes back in the middle of the season, you have that wild card that says, yeah, we can lose one of our starters. That's okay. We have Jeffrey Springs coming back, and he's going to be back in like August. So you're not really in a place where you have to panic at the deadline like a lot of teams will. You have that ace to me, I think Jeffrey Springs is going to be an ace when he returns. He's going to be a frontline guy. So the Rays are in one of those positions again where they're going to have to take 3 guys off the 60-day or off the roster and put them on 60-day IL. And then you're going to see what their roster really looks like, because they're going to add 3 more players to the roster during spring training, and then you're going to go, oh, well, that's what they were leaning towards.
So are both Shanes going to be back this year?
No, just Boz. And Boz is he I still like, yes, I get people's trepidation about whether or not he's going to become a guy who can have length in games and actually do a full season, because like last now, he hasn't been that yet. But I think if he does, he's going to be one of the most interesting players in the AL East in 2024, because his stuff, pure wise, would be right up there with Cole's. So you're looking at a guy who can be a game changer along with Springs. You put Boz, Springs, and Eflin in a playoff situation, and I'm very happy. Pepio is the fourth guy or whatever it ends up being. Like, you have four strong options at the end. And then to me, Drew Rasmussen can come back and be a reliever. Why not? He can shut down guys, be a 2-inning guy, maybe bridge the 6th and the 7th, whatever you need him for. He can be that effective. I would not bring him back as a starter, because to me, that would just kill his career. I think it would be done once that arm goes the next time. It's it. It's the end of the line for him. So
use him in critical situations for a limited time.
Be able to rest him extra when you need to. And they did that already. Like, they babied him really hard, like through his entire 23 and 22. Like, there was no reason for that arm to go again. So there's obviously something that he can't carry. And, whether that be the extra rest helps him or not, I don't know. The velocity might just be it. He might have to tweak down the velocity, and I'm not sure how effective he'll be at that point. So that's always hard to tell, right? I don't know. It's bad, though, because Drew Rasmussen has a special talent. He's a frontline guy if he's healthy and chugging. So it's too bad that we can't get to see that full time. And I also think Taj Bradley deserves more credit than he's getting with the Rays. I don't think that people should put too much weight on Taj Bradley's 2023. If you remember Chris Archer and a lot of the younger pitchers when they first came up, even Blake Snell, people were down on them for 2 or 3 years, and then boom, everything clicked. Like, it takes time for some of those guys to really put everything together and have confidence in their repertoire. And I think Taj Bradley has the confidence where it could even happen in 24 at some point. So I see him and Shane Baz probably starting in the minors, possibly with Tyler Alexander being in the rotation to start, because they don't have a lefty right now. So there's a chance both of those guys will start down there, or maybe even Pepio, so they can tweak some of his stuff. But Pepio, I think, is more MLB ready than the other two. So I would probably see that, health willing for all of the guys in the rotation.
Right.
So we'll see how it works out. But I like the rotation they've built. They're still working on the guys beneath that, and we'll see if any changes come up.
Well, I'm excited about all of those players. And when you're talking about pitching and Taj Bradley, Matt, I keep thinking every time I see that young man take the mound, and I think you may have said this before he even came up, was the sense of confidence he exuded. Whether he threw a crap ball, way out of place, his face, it didn't change. It looked like the next ball was the first ball of the game. It didn't matter whatever he threw before. His determination and his focus did not seem to change no matter what he seemed to throw before that. So, and
he's not afraid to throw things. That's important, right? There's a lot of guys that are afraid to go inside. He goes inside. Yeah. He's not afraid to do that. He goes high. He goes low. It doesn't. To me, that's important, because it gives the guys with doing the tactics confidence that they can ask for those things and they can use those things to their advantage. So when he figures out the command and control a little bit better than he has, I see him as a top 3 at least, maybe even a number 2 guy in the Rays rotation eventually.
Well, you mentioned a few guys I love to see pitching, and Drew is definitely one of them. But one of my favorites is the closer himself, the assassin, Pete Fairbanks.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you see the steel in that man's eyes. You talk about focus. I would feel a laser going right through my bat if I looked up at that man, if I was at, home plate. He fascinates me. It's funny. I may have said this before. I was at the Rays Fan Fest last year, and they were playing some kind of game. He had him and Josh Fleming on stage, and it was, did I tell you this story before?
Yep.
Okay. Well, never mind. I'll briefly say that was interesting because they had both these players and they had to search for things and in the audience, and watching Pete just leap from the stage onto the floor and then leap back up, and my heart's going, please, Pete, don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. It's like, oh gosh. But he's one of my favorites. And like I said, we're going to see some changes. We know Kit's gone. Kit's, Andrew Kittredge is definitely one that I looked at that I'd like to see there. Glass now, and I'm not surprised. I mean, you and I both talked about injuries and what's there with the rest of his career. Margot, I worry a little bit about, because I thought he was kind of a team linchpin somewhat there.
You're gonna love Johnny DeLuca. You're
Tell
gonna
me more.
love him. He's just one of those guys who goes through walls. He really has an intensity about him. That's what I like about both guys they brought in. Richie Palacios and Johnny DeLuca are high intensity guys. And I found, especially near the end of the season, the Rays seemed to get calmer and slower, and everything seemed to kind of chug downwards. And they need the opposite. You need to get super hyped towards the end so that you're exhausted, but you're like that person like that's running fanatic towards the end line. Like, you need to keep going, and you need those young guys with healthy legs that are just, they show up every game, they play hard, they lay out the body defensively and offensively, and his bat has twice the power that Margot has. So when you're losing a little bit of power from Luke Raley with Palacios, you could argue Raley has a bit more power. Johnny DeLuca makes up for that. And to me, you put him in right, you put Rosarena in left with Siri in the middle, and that's a really, really, really strong right-handed outfield. Then you flip that over and you go, okay, Palacios with Josh Lowe, and you can actually, I think, I'm not sure if Jake Mangum is going to come up with the Rays, but I've seen a lot of that guy in AAA. He's another guy that lays out the body and can really, really, really stretch things out. So if you wanted to, if you're Kevin Cash, and at some point you might see this, where you put Jose Caballero in left and you put Palacios in center, or you use Mangum, then you can see a lot of different options that they have, and better depth than they've had in the outfield that I feel personally in a long time. All of them have speed. All of them play excellent D. All of them have high intensity. So behind that front line, you've got a really strong, deep, and from what I'm reading on everybody, they're great people on top of it. They're not just great players with a lot of room to grow just with the playing time they're going to get with the Rays. But when I'll use an example because I pay attention to them very closely because they're in division. But if you bring an Alex Verdugo in, who the Red Sox wanted to get rid of at all costs, right? You're bringing what I would consider a cancer into the team, right? He's already said, I didn't want to go to the Yankees, and then, now I'm adopting them. Yeah, whatever, dude. Like, you've got issues, and I don't need that around. It's a lot like what happened with Wander. So the Rays have done a good job of filling that second line with really high quality people that are very athletic. And I think it'll drive opposing pitchers nuts because their at-bats are going to be high quality. Fewer holes overall. And Jose Caballero, I'm really interested with him in the bottom of the lineup, speed and a high OBP. I think that's a game changer that'll really chug the lineup through. And when he becomes a utility guy for them, the same thing. He'll be a high quality at-bat every time.
One thing I wanted to talk about was catching, and possible. You put forth an idea today, and I thought, you know what, that would be so sweet.
It's my Rays pet peeve. Really.
Share it, brother.
So I don't know if everybody remembers this, but way back when, and this is when I started, following the Rays very closely, they were spending money left, right, and center. Chris Betts. There was Nick. What was his name? Nick. He's the guy that ended up getting caught with marijuana.
Castellano, no.
Nick. Anyway, they were spending their top picks, right, and a lot of money. I think Chris Betts might have been a second round pick, but on catchers, and it was the same thing on the international side. They went after David Rodriguez. They went after Ronaldo Hernandez. So they were spending a lot of money and a lot of effort in catching. And then at some point when Neander came in, they said, that's it. That's enough. We need to bring in mature catchers that we know what we're getting, that are closer, and we can tweak them. And that was fine. I'm happy with that. That'll get you in the playoffs. But I want a catcher that wins me the World freaking Series. I want a Jonah Heim. I want that high quality elite guy that's a game changer. And to me, the Rays still are far away from that. Rene Pinto is a fine catcher. No knock on him whatsoever. I think over time, as he gains more experience, he'll get better. But I want to double down on that. I want to bring in William Contreras because I see the Rays window right now. When you look at the roster, you're going to have Shane McClanahan come back next year. You're going to have a whole bunch of talent, and they're built for the long run, right? So why not go and get that catcher? When I was praying they would do it with Sean Murphy last year, but the Braves and Alex Anthopoulos beat us at a punch. But I want them to go after William Contreras from the Brewers because they have Cuero, who's a really high prospect. To me, you don't trade a guy like that. He's got like an 80 grade arm. His IQ is off the charts. His hitting is off the charts. So they're not going to trade him away, I don't think. So William Contreras, who they got from the Braves, is a really great guy. And he was tied in that Murphy deal, actually. So to me, if you're the Rays and you bring him in and you have Pinto and Contreras, all of a sudden you have the best catching outside of Adley Rutschman in the AL East. And you're able to compete now at the World Series level. Like you're going for it. You're deep. You got two guys you can trust out there any day, and they can even be used as DHs or whenever you need to otherwise. So I think that to me is the last missing ingredient of a Rays team that can become like the Giants of the 3 years out of 5 that they won the World Series. If the Rays pull off that kind of move, to me, they move themselves into that possibility where they can win a few championships in a handful of years. Without it, it's a higher struggle. It can happen, but I think that it makes that lineup and defensively the team a little bit more susceptible to having those lapses. A passed ball, a called game that isn't really as sharp as it should, a runner that they don't throw out. Whatever you want to call it. To me, the catcher is the captain of the team on the field and in the playoffs in particular, because it's a game changer. We saw, all through the World Series and the playoffs and other series. So I want to see the Rays do that. And to me, that would be a huge signal. Right now, you're hearing a little bit of the mantra of the Rays fans saying, oh, we don't think they're really going for it. They have their eye on 25. Well, I'm like, if you do this kind of move and they have the prospects to deal to the Brewers to make it happen, that sends a huge signal to everyone in baseball. Yeah. Like, so I would love to see it. I think it would be daring and it would be a game changer at the same time. I think Kevin Cash would appreciate it as well as a catcher.
There's yes, as a catcher, as a manager, to have the juice there. I've talked about this before. I look across all of MLB and the managers, how many of those managers have been catchers because they're captains. I mean, I tell the young players, I see them, I said, you are the captain of this team, whether you realize it or not. You're the one making the calls, and you have to understand what's going on at home plate better than anybody. So, pivotal position. And I want to take a quick glance at what you posted for your lineup. And first, I want to say, Matt, I guess I was almost surprised to see how many of these guys we still had. I looked there and see, okay, you've got leading off with Yandy Diaz at first, Brandon Lau at DH, Randy Rosarina at left field, Josh Lowe.
Yeah, it's Lowe.
Lowe. Yeah, I'm having fun. At right field, Isaac Paredes at third, second base, Jonathan Aranda, center field, Jose Siri. And let's see, catching at Alex Jackson, Rene Pinto. I like the ones you're talking about for future catcher. Then shortstop. Then you come back with Jose Caballero. Shortstop. Boy, we had Franco. We had Walls. We had, didn't Lau even do it a few times, Brandon?
Isaac Paredes did it for one game.
That's right.
Yeah, they tried that out. I don't know if they were testing to see how it would look. Range would definitely be lacking with Isak there.
Yeah.
But he's athletic enough to make it work, like with less range, maybe Derek Jeter style. Maybe not as smart, but the Oslevis Basabe did it for a bit last year. But I come back to the fact that Junior Caminero should get more time there until they get the Carson Williams 80 grade D up to MLB. I don't know, 80, maybe 70 grade D up to the Rays. I think he's going to be like Carson Williams has probably the second most power in the entire Rays system. So having that at shortstop is a lot like, it reminds me a bit of Willie Adames, but with more power. So Willie Adames was a steady force, and maybe Carson Williams is a bit better defensively than Willie was, or to this point in his career anyway. And then he has a lot more power. And I think when you hear Carson Williams speak in his interviews and what he says, he's a very intelligent, self-aware player. I think he'll put in the work that he needs to improve his hitting ability. And to me, that's important, right? Like having I'm not a superstar by any means. I need to keep putting the work to become a better player. That's huge. And I love to hear it. And in the AFL, he was mentioning a lot of that. So I think the Rays are going to be lucky to have him as the backup option to Wander Franco by the end of the year. It'll subside a lot of worries and a lot of issues. And then you can have Taylor Walls and Jose Caballero as utility players, which is fine. Like I don't mind those guys in that role. And I'm curious to see what Taylor Walls' hip surgery results in, right? Because there's a lot of throws, especially charging towards home plate and then making the throw to first base. I didn't know there was a hip issue. So there's a lot of those throws that could have been thrown off from the motion of the hips. And those are the ones that pulled his defensive ability down through the year, and that he made it some really weird errors on. So, maybe those go away, and then his hitting, especially, like maybe his hitting improves to the point where he becomes a shortstop that can start at the MLB level. Then the Rays are just, fat and happy.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Well, if anything, Matt, I got to say, you have shared enough with us for anybody who's feeling poorly about Tyler leaving. There's a lot of good things happening with the Rays for 2024. So get your head out of your backside, folks, and realize there is sunshine somewhere else besides there that you can find. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I've got to try to make out some of the spring training will be here before you know it. Geez, can you believe that? I mean,
Wayne going down. I'm like, I really want some heat.
We got to get you down here to Florida, my friend.
Yeah.
And of course, they've had heavy rains come through here. And unlike you guys dealing with some heavy snow, I believe, up there. Aren't you?
Getting 25 centimeters tomorrow. So it should be fun. First snow of the year, though. So I can't complain.
Well, good. I guess. Oh, man. Well, I can't thank you enough, Matt. That's Matt Germain. That's MAT_Germain, GERMAIN _. And I'll have this in the notes as well. Matt always has something great to say on Twitter. New insights. My gosh. And Matt, you track so much with the minor leagues. I loved reading stuff that you're writing last year early on about Junior Caminero. It's like, who is this guy? And even Taj Bradley and some other ones. So, folks, if you're interested in actually seeing what not only what the Rays look like now, what they're going to be in the future, Matt's the guy to go to on Twitter. Again, that's Matt, MAT_Germain, GERMAIN _. So check him out. And Matt, I can't thank you enough, brother, for sharing your wit and wisdom and friendship today on the show.
No problem at all. I'm glad that we shook the rust off of, the holiday period, and 2024 is underway, buddy.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matt. It's been wonderful once again having you here, and I look forward to talking with you real soon, buddy.
All right. Take care.
All righty. Thank you all for joining us here today. Look forward to talking with you soon. And just remember, you can always find us here. You can find us Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. And also you can find us on www.baseballbizondeck.com. And leave us any notes you might have, any reviews, when we'll look forward to talking with you again real soon. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music rocking forward.